You know, this is an area within my realm of responsibility, our learning and development and tuition aid, and so we continue to have a lot of conversations about this. At this point, we do not ask for a commitment of time after they complete that degree. We're a little bit of, even Steve, with your slide up there, we're still, from a cultural standpoint, in many ways, still very promote from within, still very, our CEO has been CEO for 25 years. I mean, that's almost unheard of, in terms of an organization that big. And so from the graduate program, I agree with Steve. I think it may be reasonable to have some expectation, especially with some of these executive MBA programs. They're very expensive, and we try to do a very good job of selectively granting those for people that we really think are going to be high potentials moving forward. For the undergrad, we really feel like in some ways it's our responsibility and giving back to the community. We only pay on the basis of grade, so they get X percent for, obviously 100% back for an A. Then it's a decreasing scale depending on the grade that they get, because we want people that are committed to the studies. We want them to get the most out of it. And then there's a limit as to how much they can do per semester. But in some areas, for instance, in some of our call centers that employ part-time people, we have a lot of people that are working these crazy call center hours, going back to school full-time. I know one area that we have a call center is El Paso, Texas, because so many of the people are bilingual there. And so it's a great area for our Spanish-speaking customers, to be able to have the coverage from a call center standpoint. And many of them are students at UT, which is right there. I mean, in some ways, you look at what's the investment of $3,500 a semester or $4,000 a semester. Even if they go on and go work for somebody else, or, we hope at least they're going to be a customer and a good citizen. And so we continue to have a lot of those conversations, but it's a huge issue, especially as a mutual company, wanting to use those dollars wisely. So.
It's actually a topic that we've just started discussing because we, as being a small family-owned company, could really afford one at a time. So my father and I have had that conversation, and we've talked to a few individuals, and we don't know what that answer is, or how long that commitment would be, or the length of time of the education process, and how they would work, how their work would coincide with that. So it's a new avenue for us, but it's something that we're exploring.
Other questions? And I'm afraid we're probably getting close to where we have about 5 minutes, so maybe one more question. Yes.
So this comes off of, Steve, your slide in which you showed what the universities could be doing, offering executive education for non-executives and so on. So we've heard this morning a lot about MBAs and the need for leadership training. My question is more, maybe to both of you, how much is there a need in your minds that the workforce, the technical workforce, the working engineer, the working scientist, needs to be at the cutting edge as long as employed by Motorola? I say this because this phrase has been bandied around for a while, that the half-life of an engineering degree is about 7 to 10 years, given that the new knowledge is being created so rapidly. So is it true in the workplace that you need technical people to continue to take courses, and what can universities be doing about that?
Well, I can answer that directly because that was what my articles in IEEE have been about. National Academy of Engineering actually says half-life of an engineering degree has just fallen below 2 years. So ongoing continuing education for engineering is not only imperative, it's incredibly critical. Having said that, people will comment, I think individuals are different from each other. We have people who on their own keep up with the latest leading edge of technology, and they have 100 patents and they continue leading innovations in a variety of areas. We have one guy at Motorola who's worked in 4 different businesses and has patents in all of them. So you run across these stars. There's Michael Jordans in business too. On the other hand, the middle of the road engineer and innovator left to their own devices will quickly fall behind the leading edge of innovation, even working on teams, because the workload is substantial and you don't have a lot of extra time to go keep up. And from the innovation space, there's been a lot written recently about job security and whether people are going to share their expertise with others before they leave the workforce and even within the workforce. And one of the things we've discovered that may already be known in academia, but it was sort of new to us, is that someone who is an innovator that keeps up with the leading edge of their discipline isn't going to worry about sharing expertise, because if they're continuing to advance their knowledge, they'll be ahead of whoever they share it with. It's only the people who haven't kept up who jealously guard their knowledge, because if they give it away, they won't have further value in the company. So that's an interesting area for graduate education to address, the motivation and the need to continue to advance over your career to be one of these stars.
In our company, we have no applied research, no basic research going on. So our engineering people are really motivated to and driven by enhanced certifications. They want to be Microsoft certified engineers. They want to be Cisco certified engineers. They prize those practical skills and their development. And I'd say most of them want to be in the leading edge, or at least aware of what's happening in leading edge thought. And we support a lot of that kind of education for the technical disciplines. But a little bit of my comment about your mission, and for those people, they don't want PhDs. They don't want to start a PhD program. They'd rather I pay for them to be Cisco certified, because that's currency in the marketplace, and it's thought leadership for them. And if there's not something for them every 2 or 3 years that gets them with other really bright people who are seeking knowledge and obtaining certifications, then they get restless and they leave us. So we really focus on those professional certifications for those technical folks.
I might add a short comment that I did some work several years ago on the rate at which universities that offer engineering education actually change their curricula. And the median was 6.5 years. There were data points up to 12 years, pretty typical in Illinois at 6 to 8. And the best practices in that were every year, there's an organization, I'm not going to name names because I don't want to get going on this, but my favorite organization is one that does a great deal of engineering education, and they survey all of their graduates every year and ask them what are they doing in the workplace that they didn't learn when they got their degree. And they take those data every year and revise their curriculum. My thinking is, with the advances in social networking, people who can find answers on Google or other sites rather than go to a training course or another degree program, the currency of knowledge is very temporal right now. And I think if graduate schools are going to compete in that marketplace for knowledge, 2 things have to happen. Curricula have to be turned over or updated much more rapidly than they are. And secondly, they need to be offered in a more granular format.
However, the basic framework of thought that you learn as an engineer, the approach to problem solving, and the breadth of knowledge that you get from a liberal arts degree, those can be refreshed. But those patterns that students learn, whether it's an undergrad or graduate school, really are foundational and fundamental. So there is hope.
Well, I want to take this point to thank our panelists for a very lively discussion, and I know the conversation still wants to go on, so I'm hoping that over lunch we'll be able to do that. I invite Deb and Bob to come forward then to present our panelists with the plaque.
The dusty graduate curriculum. I like that. I think that gave us all some food for
Yes.
thought. being able to create strong partnerships with our colleagues is certainly motivated our conversations today, and we deeply, deeply appreciate your contributions to our IAG Summit, and of course, we'd like to recognize you with these plaques.
I'd be disappointed if we didn't get
Add to your wall of plaques. I'm
Thank
sure,
you
with
very
all
much.
your contributions.
Thank you. Thanks.
I think this is nice. I haven't had a plaque in a long time.
The last one I got was for the Cub Scouts.
Well, Mary, this is a toughie because your cousin Father Bob's my priest, and I suffer from Catholic guilt myself. So get ready. He's going to know you were here.
Well, he'll be at my house right after Mass on Thanksgiving morning, so.
I also want to take this time to recognize Jessica Horowitz, our Secretary-Treasurer for IAGS. Jessica, would you stand up so we can thank you? I also want to recognize Lori Henderson, who did all of the work to create today's facilities and activities. Lori, we really appreciate your contributions.